In 1837, in the state of Connecticut, America, a boy is born named John Pierpont Mongan, or J.P. Morgan for short. J.P. Morgan is the last of the American builders, unlike other American builders who were all born into poor families. J.P. Morgan is born into an extremely wealthy family. His father, Junius Spencer Morgan, was a successful banker in London and was also very rich, but he didn't give J.P. a cent. There is a story that says he puts $1 million in cash in front of J.P., and J.P. thinks he wants to give it to him, but his father tells him, "J.P., this is $1 million, learn how to earn it." Later, he takes the $1 million and goes. They put him in the best school and provide him with the best resources, but they don't give him money. Not even $1 in his pocket. They say, if you want money, you have to work. If you work for me, I'll give you money. For example, sweep my office and I'll give you $1. J.P. Morgan goes through a tough childhood because most of the time, he is also sick. His lungs constantly get infected and he always coughs. It's the 19th century and there are no doctors and they can't find and treat J.P.'s lung infection. He lives with this lung infection for years until he miraculously gets better when he turns 19. Despite being sick, he gets enrolled in the best schools in the world and attends them. Eventually, after years, J.P.'s health improves and he goes to find a job. When they realize that this boy is Mr. Morgan, a famous banker, they immediately hire him on Wall Street. But when it reaches his father's ears, he gets tougher on J.P. and says, "You used my name and got a job. If you want to take away my honor and my name, I disown you. Be careful." In 1859, when J.P. Morgan is only 22 years old, he takes a big risk with the company's money and buys a Brazilian coffee ship and sells it the same day to another company with a good profit. Although he had made a good profit, he was scolded. Both the company he worked for and his father told him that he had wasted a worthless risk and that all his capital could easily be wiped out. J.P. Morgan says, "If they think that way, then I won't work anymore," and he leaves. If you asked him why, he would say they are cowards and cannot be successful businessmen. Although his father was very successful and the company he worked for, young J.P. Morgan had great self-confidence and started his own business. A few months later, he meets a girl named Amelia Sturgis and marries her, but his wife dies 4 months later from tuberculosis. J.P. Morgan is deeply saddened, and to forget, he becomes completely engrossed in his work. During this period, the American Civil War breaks out, and as J.P. is only 24 years old, they say he must serve. It was common at that time for those who had money to pay someone else to go to the military in their place. J.P. finds a cheap substitute who agrees to go to war instead of him for $300. If you remember, Andrew Carnegie also sent someone in his place, but he paid $850. You should know that J.P. Morgan, like Andrew Carnegie or Cornelius Vanderbilt, became wealthy at that time too, because of the American Civil War. For example, one thing J.P. Morgan did that made him rich was buying old and obsolete army weapons for $350 each, and then giving them to a company for refurbishment. Then he would sell them to the government for $22, making a good profit in the process. He made a profit of 600%, but he realized that if he produced these weapons himself, the government would need ready-to-use weapons, and he could easily sell them. In 1871, J.P. Morgan is now very wealthy, but his father is still not satisfied and says, "You still have a long way to go before you gain my experience." This remark made him strive harder to surpass his father. That's why he approached a successful American banker named Anthony Drexel and said, "Let's establish a large private bank together." They built a bank called Drexel, Morgan & Co., which still exists today, although its name is Chase, and it is still called J.P. Morgan Chase. From this year, 1871, the J.P. Morgan empire begins to rise, and from then on, he is constantly moving up. During this time, most industries in America are monopolies. For example, oil is in the hands of Rockefeller, steel is controlled by Carnegie, and railroads and shipping belong to Vanderbilt. But Vanderbilt only accepts investors. The others say, "No, we have our own money." J.P. Morgan. He pours a lot of capital into the Vanderbilt Railroad Company. During this period, Vanderbilt has aged and become much larger than J.P. Morgan. At that time, all the affairs were in the hands of Vanderbilt's son, William. However, William did not possess his father's talent. and 2 years after his father's death in 1879, his shortcomings led J.P. Morgan to make the largest investment in the American railroad, taking control of the entire American West in his own hands. If Cornelius Vanderbilt were alive, he would not have allowed J.P. Morgan to do this. He would have done it himself. William made a move that would diminish Cornelius Vanderbilt's monopoly and give 1/3 of the power of the American railroad to J.P. Morgan. At this time, J.P. Morgan is 42 years old and recognized as a prominent American entrepreneur. However, his father always said, "No, you are not capable of doing such a thing." Maybe he was proud of his son deep down, but he never showed it. He would talk to his son like this. Look at this picture of J.P. Morgan. It has been edited because he always said, "I have an ugly face and my jaw is very large. Retouch my jaw in the photo and then publish it in the newspapers." J.P. Morgan. At that time, he was considered one of the tall figures. You should know that in the 19th century, people were shorter, with an average height of 1.65 centimeters, while J.P. Morgan's height was 188 centimeters. At a time when there were no telephones, telegraphs, or Skype, wealthy individuals would always talk face to face, and when two people discussed an important matter, their appearances had a significant impact. J.P. Morgan, with his 188 centimeter height, had a captivating and terrifying appearance, a face with determination. Therefore, in negotiations with others, this appearance and height made people more willing to accept his proposals and ideas. This can be seen in politicians as well, especially in the past. For example, Otto von Bismarck. His height and his imposing figure were very influential in his power, especially in the power of his words. Reza Shah Pahlavi too. Anyone who spoke to him could not oppose him. It should be noted that Reza Shah was also very tall, 193 centimeters at that time. Bismarck was the same height as Reza Shah Pahlavi, 193 centimeters. In summary, we want to say that in the past, physique, height, and appearance had a significant impact on a person's persuasive power. During this time, when J.P. Morgan learned that a person named Thomas Edison was doing something interesting, he conducted some research and quickly went to invest and develop his work. When J.P. Morgan started his collaboration with Edison, the Edison Electric Company was nothing. But after this collaboration started, it grew day by day, and it was with J.P. Morgan's capital that Edison succeeded in electrifying the first city in America, namely Manhattan, New York. Of course, Tesla played an important role in this progress as well, but they didn't give him anything. Since J.P. Morgan was the main investor in the Edison Company, he told Edison to change the company's name. Instead of Edison Electric, let's call it General Electric, a colossal company that still exists. We mentioned earlier that Andrew Carnegie, at the age of 70, said he wanted to be with his family. "If anyone buys my steel factories, I will sell them immediately." Who bought them instantly? J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan gave $480 million to Carnegie and said, "Go be with your family." Interestingly, years later, J.P. Morgan said that if Carnegie had asked for $580 million, he would have bought it. J.P. Morgan changed the name of Carnegie Steel to U.S. Steel, which still exists today. It is not only the world's first steel company, but also the first billion-dollar company in the world. We come to the year 1893, when a major recession occurs in America. People give away all their dollars and buy gold, causing not only the devaluation of the U.S. dollar, but also the collapse of stocks and the economy of the United States and the world. Here is where a great opportunity arises, and an opportunist wants to seize it. J.P. Morgan was that opportunist. He realized that he could offer to the U.S. government and prevent the bankruptcy of the U.S. economy. He buys $650 million in gold bond loans from the U.S. government, which, as you know, was a staggering amount in 1893. This move by J.P. Morgan saved the U.S. economy, but also multiplied his own power and capital several times over. Many opposed this and said it was not right for a banker to save the government and that a capitalist should not have such influence. J.P. Morgan gained significant power, and people strongly opposed him, saying, "What does it mean for a capitalist to have so much influence? It's like being the ruler of the country." But J.P. Morgan was not alone. He also had Rockefeller on his side. This was the time when the power of capitalists surpassed that of the government for the first time. J.P. Morgan was the last person to be recognized as one of America's builders, completing the video of America's builders.